Tullow Oil, in the meantime, a global oil and gas exploration company headquartered in London, has identified exploration opportunities in East Africa. Earlier today, I caught up with the company's CEO Aidan Heavy, and we discussed the opportunity presenting itself in the region.
We discovered oil in the Rift Basin in Uganda, and it was the first time that oil was discovered in East Africa. And the effect of that now has to open up a whole new industry, and the excitement in East Africa is both the oil and some recent big gas discoveries offshore Tanzania.
Of course, we've got 12 months of exploration in Uganda, crucial to the assessment of the reserves that you're actually looking at and the potential that you're looking at in that territory. But looking at the production targets you've put out there, 200,000 barrels of oil per day by 2015. That's double the target you've set out for 2012. It's very bullish. What are some of the potential challenges you face in actually hitting those targets?
You're looking at countries like Uganda, which is landlocked. You're looking at a country that's 1,200 kilometers away from the coastline. So the big challenges is the infrastructure, getting the facilities in place. We've massive challenges in getting local companies set up to service the industry, training programs. Even for example, food. We need to build a huge agricultural sector just to feed the staff that's required to develop all of these fields. So it's a major project.
Let's take a look then at getting the stuff out to the market out there, Aidan, because as you say, there's a lot of reliance with Uganda being a landlocked country on infrastructure at this stage. What's the status of things in that regard? And are you looking at making any investments here to make this even more commercially viable for Tullow Oil?
Yeah, I think the first stage of this project is to find out exactly how much oil is there. We've drilled them a lot of wells so far. We have found about 1.5 billion barrels of oil. But we've got about 12 months of appraising those discoveries to find out exactly what the real quantity is. And during that period of time, you will also assess what are the best development options for the oil. And again, part of that whole process is we need to build up a whole infrastructure there. We need to make sure that we build local companies who can supply the oil industry. We need training programs in place to make sure that the Ugandans run the whole operation. There's a major project. We need infrastructure projects, and then we need to sit down once we have all the fields developed and the plans in place to sit down with the government and decide on what are the best options, both in relation to refinery for a local product and maybe export of some of the oil. So it's a big project, and it's going to take a lot of time and a huge amount of investment.
So a lot depends on projects actually coming online, but on government approvals as well. What's your assessment of the regulatory environments that you're exposed to?
Well, I think this is a new industry for Uganda, and the Ugandans are working very hard to set up all the legal systems and all the procedures in place, and that will take time as well. And I think everybody just has to be patient, because this is a major project. It's one of the biggest projects ever in East Africa, and it's important it's done properly. So, I think all the companies just have to be patient and allow the country to get its systems in place.
Past lessons have been learned in terms of what governments actually reap and how. We've had resource nationalization, a very big theme right now. How are you working with governments on that basis and actually managing oil revenue, or is it still early days?
Well, I think the industry has changed with him a lot. Most of the projects today and the contracts that are between the oil companies and the governments are very much in favour of the government. So the bulk of the revenue in virtually all the modern contracts go to the government. For example, in Uganda, 80% of the revenue goes to the government. So, I think the contracts are now in favour of the governments, and what the challenge for the companies is to look at how big these projects are and how to attract investment. So political risk and attracting investment, especially in the current climate where financial markets are in turmoil. So it's important that the projects have a reasonable, fair rate of return, and it's a win-win for both the governments and the oil companies.
On the East Coast, you've got Uganda, a prime territory, focus also on Kenya, Ethiopia. How's that fitting into the picture, and are you going down these routes solo?
We've in Uganda, it's a huge project, and we're bringing in two partners, Total and CNOOC, and they'll have a third each of that project. In Kenya and Ethiopia, where we have a huge acreage position, probably 10 times bigger than the position we have in Uganda, we're 50% of all of those licenses. And we operate them. Our partners there are African Oil.
Well, for now, East Africa is a new frontier in oil exploration, and much of it remains virtually unexplored. As you create the hype around this market, though, how do you see this competitive landscape shifting?
Well, I think it's East Africa has been ignored for a long time. And I think the discoveries in Uganda, as I said, have opened it all up. So you're looking at a major change. There's fantastic big gas discoveries offshore now, East Africa, and they will transform the whole industry. And what you're looking at is mega investment. The investment required for the development of all of these projects is huge. In Uganda alone, we're looking at an investment of close on $10 billion. So this is huge investment. It does change the landscape. But I think from the point of view of East Africa, finding oil at this particular time is a good time to find it, because there's a lot more commitment now from companies to make sure that local content is a key part of it, local employment. And so I think it is a good time to find oil and gas, and I think it's going to transform the continent.